We're past 20 chapters in. This is chapter 21 of Fortnite: The Apocalypse. And there's a couple areas that I'm not gonna be like, oh man, I hate this, but it's like I'm I'm hoping that Nakaba calms down a little bit with giving Percival these boosts. I'm alright with it to a degree because still the beginning. This is still the very early portions of the story. It just kind of feels a lot because obviously like it's been back to back, but I feel like it's been more of kind of setting up steps. And I'm hoping that this will be like the last kind of like big boost that Percival gets in a fight before before he ends up meeting an opponent that actually pushes him or is outright able to defeat him in combat, where you have like a spot where it's like he's not gonna just be able to, OP main character stuff get past that. And again, I'm perfectly fine with this because it's the early portions of the story. This is the area where the main character is allowed to flex like crazy. You're still getting used to them, and in Percival's case, that does give him a little bit extra of a bonus in this scenario. Is unlike a lot of other main characters, he didn't start out with his power. We didn't even see him get his main character power until like what was it the whole fight with Pelagard, and that was like cool. He had magic on his hands and he was making the chibi Percivals and stuff. This chapter is what feels way more like this is Percival's power. Like it has like the hero type. The hero type is neat because it gives him more utility. I kind of wish it was more towards the side of like it's like shapeless. I like the concept of the hero type. My only worry is it's really OP early on. Like if we found out what the hero type did and maybe Percival, like maybe like outside of what like the shaping stuff, he started out with the ability to kind of heal to a degree would be one thing. Maybe just the chibi Percivals could heal. But there's just a lot that he can do already. But I feel like that's just because we're getting a lot of this in a big kind of like full steam ahead motion. And it's like we had the whole Pelagard fight that was short, and then we had Talisker, and it was like a moment like that fight kind of actually got into a spot. We ended up getting Percival getting further his powers. But this one I feel like the Chibi Percivals having wings. You see like Percival flying and stuff. This has to be more towards this. This is what his power is going to essentially be. What I was saying is like I kind of wish it was way more of like the shapeless power to it, because like I see Percival using it, and every single time I think he's like the Green Lantern, and I know there's multiple lanterns, but I mean you just literally pick any of them that people refer to as the Green Lantern and just go with it. Just like the ability to how to have like this formless power that you can make into any shape, and I kind of wish it was more like that, and then his magic tools were what did these other things like flying. Maybe his helmet did something that gave him to like defense, like the whole part where Talisker had that lightning bolt come down on him and it like got absorbed into Percival's magic. Like if that was something the helmet did, I think that'd be really cool. Again, just because I don't want it to make it feel like I'm complaining. It's like it's almost a soft criticism. Like it's like if this was way later in the story, or I guess not way later, like if this was like the actual like full Ironside battle, I'd be like probably a little bit annoyed by it, but it clearly it's not. I mean, they're not here to beat Ironside, they're here to stop him, and it's been way more set up of a bundle of like team tactics and moves that let them do it. But it was obviously primarily on Percival's power that led him, that got them to be able to get in those positions. So, I still like this far into Fortnite: The Apocalypse probably better than I did for Seven Deadly Sins. I'd say Seven Deadly Sins had more of like a fun action setting, but I like the Fortnite: The Apocalypse style. Like, it feels way more like it's like a bunch of like low-level people on an adventure, because Percival, even though he has a really good power, he doesn't really know how to fully use it, and it's not just like, oh, it's a new ability, I'm trying to, I gotta figure out like how to fully grasp this. It's like, no, he's just like he has this super innocence, and he lives in such a closed up bubble at the top of God's finger with his grandfather that he doesn't know a lot about just like like combat and like situations he's in, and probably like not as crazy with his power. Like if he was way more out in the world, I'm sure he could do way more creative things with his abilities. But I don't know. I'm still very curious as to what Nakaba is planning to do with his character, like in terms of like the theming. Because obviously, like the little chibi Percivals with the wings is almost, or they're almost like cherubs. Like I don't know if he's trying to go for like Percival's like a cherub thing. Is he trying to go for like a Valkyrie type thing? It's still, you know, as you know, in the works, in the question mark. But in this chapter, I did like seeing Ironside's magic in use. I would really like to know what exactly it does, and either like detail of his overall magic, or at least like a better description of what these slash attacks do. Because right now they're just slash attacks. I mean, it's not that crazy of a power. I mean, like Twigo was doing stuff like this, not as like fancy, but it's like he's doing just big razor wind air slashes. You know, the slash going through all these trees and doing damage. The only real difference is like he's doing it way more casually and from like without obviously not needing a sword, which makes you wonder if he used a sword, would it be better? Because we know canonically in the Seven Deadly Sins world, you're more powerful if you use a weapon suited to you, because it's like it makes it way easier to harness your power if it's like channeled through like a medium kind of thing. But if it was like these slashes like did like Percival couldn't heal from them, or it's like, oh, if you get cut by them, they'll just continuously bleed. Like, you know, he can't directly heal from it or something. Like, essentially, like, imagine it applies a debuff. Like, it also reduces healing by 50% or something. Something like that, where it was way more threatening to have to deal with. Whereas, like, these are just general slashes. And I'm very curious as to the like, legit description of Percival's, like, turning feelings into powers. This is a shonen, so, like, I know what they're doing, like, but like to a degree. But I'm curious if it's like literally, is he like absorbing their their feelings and somehow converting it into power or something? Because the way that I saw it was more of like he's hearing their words of encouragement, and you know, obviously his team needing and believing him and whatnot, and it's like that's riling him up and giving him more reason to fight. It's giving him like way more of a drive. Where it's more of like a motivational thing. It's way more just as like something to kind of like get him off his ass and to get back in the fight kind of thing. Again, I'm curious as to that aspect of it, because it's like, is it a literal sense? Because would this be like if Percival just had more people around him cheering him on and stuff? Would he just become more powerful? It definitely needs to be described. That's like I would say the one thing in the chapter that really needs to give some better description of, because I can't tell if it's like literal. Because I thought it was more of like a just kind of like metaphorical way of speaking about it, but it seems almost like it's like literal in this chapter, like he's converting feelings of his companions into power and stuff. It's weird. But he's like flying around trying to get away from Ironside. Ironside's doing his like slashes, and Percival's keeping like a good distance, but like there's a part it's like, oh no, he's able to keep away only because Ironsides is still being hindered by Nasian's you know, Bane. Like, what was it called? Hell's Bane, that was, or Henbane or whatever, that was like poisonous, like a numbing effect that's just slowing him. But at the same time, he's still not in full. Like, Ironside is still clearly very stronger than them, and even Percival having like a sudden main character boost, and Ironside weakened from the poison. Like he's slowly gaining ground on Percival. So it's like he's only got a time limit before he eventually, you know, gets caught in Ironside's attacks. But what they're pretty much doing, they're doing like the old classic, you know, when you see like a homing missile, and they end up kind of like flying and getting it to kind of like last second hit into you know, either like a vehicle of some kind or a bad guy or something. You know, I'm sure like a lot of people understand what I'm saying. I'm just not describing it the best way. You know, it's like, oh yeah. Actually, the first thing I thought of like as a scene where it happens was not the same thing, but it was like the clip of Supergirl when Darkseid shot her Omega beams at him, and then at like last second she goes and like jumps over him and does like this like crazy body move and like kicks him and like pushes off and like throws him into his own beam, something like that kind of thing. They're like flying in, just doing their move, and I really liked how Ironside didn't notice Donnie. Like Donnie was able to use his magic to move the whole coffin of Eternal Darkness, because he's so much weaker than Ironside that he just didn't pay any attention to him, which is a really good way of utilizing like a logical thing, because clearly like Ironside is powerful. He's gonna be more used to like in fights where he has to like keep an eye on things and be serious. It's either whatever he's focused on or other threats, like people that are like actually somebody he has to be like, oh yeah, I should keep an eye on you. It reminds me a bit of Seven Deadly Sins when was it Geldra? Is that her name? How her name is said when she's able to kind of sneak up on the Demon King. It's like you're not gonna notice somebody that's so below your radar that you would have to have them essentially come up and get your attention forcefully rather than you just actually notice what they're doing. And then Percival comes in, does this cool slash attack, and ends up hitting it, breaks up the Covenant of Eternal Darkness. There was a moment in it, in the chapter that I was like looking at, I was kind of confused on. And while the pieces are all falling, and you see the pieces falling around Ironside and stuff, but the sword handle, the one that Meliodas, well, I guess more like a key, sort of. But obviously, you know, the one that Meliodas had as a sword handle, it says freeze in the like little like text box of animation, and like, is it fully frozen? Like, I'm assuming it's what Donnie was doing, because it's weird that like Donnie wasn't shown in the pose he does when he's using his powers, but we do see a panel right before that where it's Donnie kind of like extending his hand or about to extend his hand out, and he's like, we got to get a piece of it. So I'm assuming that would be Donnie, because I was so confused. Otherwise, I was like, why is this freezing in air? The Donnie thing is the only thing that makes sense to me, but it's like, it threw me off for a moment because we know Donnie gets in that pose whenever he ends up using his power. But we do end up getting Ironside's helmet falling off. And the last thing I wanted to just mention in the chapter is I can't tell if Ironside is a character that I should recognize from Seven Deadly Sins or if he's a fully new face. I don't know. I have absolutely no idea if like suddenly next chapter he's gonna mention a name or they'll show what he looked like in the Seven Deadly Sins point in time, and they're like, oh, it's that guy. I'm super confused because I don't think Ironside is his real name. And it's like, because you look at Percival, a name, I mean, really realistically anything can be a name, but it's like Percival Varghese, and this guy's name is Ironside. So it sounds more like a title. But anyway, other than that though, Caldwell, tell me your thoughts about this. I was a little bit back and forth on like a bit of the chapter because Percival got like another power up, but I feel like everything up until this point was like him actually unlocking his power, where those were just kind of like pieces that he was getting as he was getting closer to an actual power unlock. But that's going to be what we're going to have to wait and see on, maybe get like a better description of what Percival's magic does, because I know it's hero type, but I'm sure Percival's magic has to have a name of its own. Like, it's not, because otherwise it's going to be like, is everybody with hero type magic, it's just called hero type magic? Does it have its own kind of like brand that he's going to kind of label it as? I don't know. Either way, comment below, thumbs up the video, but friend, like, and subscribe button, and check out my other videos. But on that, I appreciate everyone who's already subscribed. Thank you all for listening. Bye.